All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Carrington, and I am a licensed clinical professional counselor with a tone therapy. And I also am a chief readiness officer with Capital Clarity Collective, where I focus more on the financial readiness side of the practice and operational stability of private practices, especially when they're trying to prepare for growth. And the topic of the presentation that I'm about to do is called The Hidden Revenue Crisis in Private Practice, uncovering the financial challenges that threaten the sustainability of mental health practices and the systemic solutions that can turn the tide. So I wanted to start off this presentation with a question that changed everything for me. So wanted to start out with how all of this began. I met a woman by the name of Renetta Dunbar, who is a revenue cycle consultant for mental health practices. I was part of a group on Facebook called Mental Health Billing. And in that group, there were mental health billers that were having discussions about providers. And I decided to post a message in the group regarding other types of vendors and providers that work with revenue cycle managers and billers. And so my question for the group was, do mental health billers collaborate with CFOs or CPAs? So in the question that I was proposing to the mental health billers, I wasn't really asking much from the question, but there were a couple of billers that responded to the post. And Vernetta was one of the billers who immediately opened up the door for that conversation around collaboration between billing and CFOs and CPAs. So I reached out to her and we had some small talk, of course, and she was generous with her time. And then she welcomed me into another conversation about how revenue cycle management is the revenue engine for mental health providers. And for me, I didn't connect the dots. I wasn't connecting revenue cycle to private practice at that particular time of talking with her. So at that time, my understanding around revenue cycle was only exclusive to my relationship with Headway, Alma, and a few other therapist related Facebook groups and of course LinkedIn. So my knowledge around revenue cycle management was very limited in terms of having an idea of what revenue cycle management really was in the world in terms of how it shaped the way that providers get paid. So here I am as a provider, and many other providers who experience not knowing what they don't know. And that's when, for me, something important hit. I think, and this is not just my thinking, there is a lot of things that we don't know. And as providers, and many therapists like myself are trying to run and operate a healthcare business with literally not much information about how healthcare actually works, how healthcare finance and operations actually work. So I pulled a couple of sources because I wanted to better understand this issue around the clinician knowledge gap. And what I found was that only about 12% of behavioral health providers get any type of formal training in billing or insurance. I know for me, I did not take one class or one workshop or even have a CEU connected to billing or around insurance or even just business training on development of private practice. Most of it came from information that I saw online and Google search. And most of us have never been taught anything around how insurance payers think. We don't know how the claims process works, how it flows, or how reimbursement is even determined. 12% of behavioral health providers get any type of training on this, only 12%. And because of this knowledge gap, this is why we are making decisions without the proper information that we actually need. So, in that knowledge gap, that led me on a mission to go deeper and dig deeper for just more information. And the deeper that I went in my research, the more I began to realize how much is really happening behind the scenes that most clinicians and providers really are not exposed to, or do they ever see. So what was presented to me from Vernetta and many other billers that works with mental health professionals and mental health providers, they showed me aging AR. Had no idea what that was. I saw denials. Did I have language for that? As far as claims that were not paid? No, I didn't know it was even a denial. And not only that, denials that were never followed up on, systematic underpayments, insurance not paying from what they are supposed to pay according to the contract, the payer contract. I saw credentialing gaps in the credentialing process. No reconciliation between the insurance billing or the bookkeeping processes, a mismatch in terms of the data. Also, learning about the possibility of moving from solo practitioner to group practitioner or group practice owner and attempting to scale, but not really having any type of forecasting in terms of financial forecasting, no operational budgeting to make that decision of scale, and no type of transparency or visibility with the financial data. So the data that I am presenting in terms of the statistics and the percentages comes from the Medical Group Management Association. And it's been consistent. And what it says is that up to 30% of claims, insurance claims, are actually denied and underpaying on the first submission. And 65% of those denied claims were never really ever resubmitted. So this data here indicates that there is still money that is just simply lost in AR and it's sitting in an account somewhere and not being recovered. So what that adds up to is a hidden revenue crisis in private practice. Because if you are a practice owner, you are amongst a group of practice owners that are losing between 10 to 30% of collectible revenue from the insurers and payers without even realizing it. So, aging receivables that are known as AR, if you have aging receivables in claims more than 90 days old, that can reach up to 25 to 40% of uncollected revenue. And when the real benchmark should be under 15% of uncollected revenue. And between 7 to 11% of behavioral health claims are underpaid. So many behavioral health providers are in that number. So when clinicians are talking about and speaking about, hey, okay, why am I submitting these claims? I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But when I look at my accounting, the numbers, the math is not mathing, the money is not adding up. So if there are providers out there that and clinicians that are having this problem, you're not imagining it. This is a real issue. This is a revenue crisis. You are losing revenue. We are losing revenue. And we just can't, we don't have the dashboard or the tools to see where it is disappearing. There because there's a lack of transparency in the data. So because of this, excuse me, because of this, this becomes even more serious when a practice owner wants to grow the practice. You want to add new employees to the business. You want to add new clinicians to build your practice. So when your practice breaks in the process, there is a scaling practice paradox because when you try to add clinicians, everything else multiplies. So so you have more volume in claims, the credentialing timelines, the denials, the pressure to pay for employees on payroll, the overhead, operational complexity begins to multiply, and you begin to burn out, especially if you are a CEO of a group practice. You begin to experience a high level of emotional strain as a result. There was another statistic that showed that 82% of small private practices, healthcare practices, fail to scale because of the operational and the financial systems that aren't in place to keep up with the growth of the practice. And most practices have about less than 2 weeks of cash reserves, but they actually need 6 to 8 weeks in order to scale in a safe way. So that goes to tell you that the burnout that many practice owners or group practice owners are experiencing has nothing to do with the clinical work of what we're doing. Where the burnout is often coming from is the lack of an infrastructure for the private practice. So, because of this lack of infrastructure, this is what led to the origination of the Capital Clarity Collective and why it was formed. Because there was clarity that clinicians and small healthcare practices or even mid-sized healthcare practices are being asked to run a healthcare business with a few things: no billing education, as we said earlier, no financial education, no operational strategies, SOPs, workflows, systems, no forecasting, and no collaborative team that can work on your behalf. And so everybody in the ecosystem and the system is working within a silo. So you have revenue cycle managers that don't talk to accountants or finance teams in private practice. You have accountants that don't talk to operational experts. And then you have the clinicians and the therapists who have no transparency or visibility in terms of their payer contracts, in terms of their revenue cycle management workflows. And so those are some of the challenges that are experienced. And so what Capital Clarity Collective intends to do is to create a ecosystem to build out the missing infrastructure. And it is not to step on any toes. It's not to uh, be salacious in exposing the problems within healthcare or doing any of those things, but it is to connect the dots so that there is one system of unified data in one place. So in our ecosystem, for this particular ecosystem for private practice, it's sliced up into four major pillars. First is the RCM Foundation and the Revenue Cycle Infrastructure, which is led by Vernetta Dunbar, who is the revenue cycle lead that is being able to help to build the foundation for the revenue coming into the business, the private practice. Secondly, it is the CPA or the CFO who can help with bringing about the financial structure, the governance, the tax planning, the forecasting, the accounting clarity into the practice. And then the third piece would be the operational budgeting, the hiring math, the compensation models, and organizational stability is brought in by Troy Sudol, who is the uh, um, a chief HR consultant as well as a CFO as well. And then I come in to integrate all of these moving parts and pieces to provide coordination of these efforts, but also to bring about revenue integrity, risk mitigation, fundability, and scaling readiness. So that is the ecosystem because no single person, it is impossible for them to fix these systemic problems and issues. It takes a collaborative ecosystem to do so. So Renetta has a private practice roadmap. And when I where we would come in, this particular part of the process would come in would be at the seventh phase, which is the practice optimization and scaling phase. And this is the stage where your revenue integrity matters the most because we want balance. We want the numbers to tell the truth about the financial story of the practice. We want to make more visible information and data about the underpayments and the denials from the payer contracts. We want to see how AR becomes a risk because without recovering that AR, you cannot pay for staff, marketing, employees, and other expenses in the practice. Cash flow, in terms of determining where um, cash flow determines whether your payroll will clear the bank. You got to make cash flow in the business, in the practice, in order to put people on payroll. The stage will also determine whether higher decisions have longer term consequences because the um, the stage will be able to determine kind of what's going on with hiring and is there any margin to hire. Funders and lenders will begin to be able to evaluate the business at large because there is more data and more visibility. And the clinician themselves or the practice owner needs more financial clarity. Unfortunately, only 22% of private practice owners have these type of tools in place to forecast and to understand what the numbers are. So that means that if any practice owner is scaling their business, they're doing it in the dark. So what we want to do to address this is to have something that we have created called a readiness diagnostic, which is similar to a revenue audit in RCM, but it is an expanded edition of a revenue audit. Think of it as a 90791 if you are billing for a psychiatric evaluation of a client. It would be a 90791 for a practice's finances. It would assess what are the revenue leakages in practice? What is the aging receivables and the denial patterns in the practice? Are there underpayments? Are there credentialing gaps? Are there any bookkeeping mismatches in the business? Cash flow volatility. does that show up in the business? Are there any operational bottlenecks that need to be addressed? Are there any fundability barriers that needs to be challenged or addressed as well? So we have this diagnostic assessment that can give the clinician or the practice owner a clear score, red, yellow, or green, and then provide a clear roadmap on how to fix these issues. It shows us what needs to be corrected before the practice can safely grow. And once we apply the readiness diagnostic, we and know what's happening in the practice, then we could monitor what we call as the financial vital signs. And what the financial vital signs are the business's vitals. The clean rate, the clean claims rate, the denial rate, the AR aging, the revenue per clinician, the payroll to revenue ratios, the cash reserves, the burn rate, the payer mix risk, forecasting runways, and underpayment trends. So, just as you would not treat a client without vitals, we shouldn't be treating our business or our private practice without financial vitals. So, as we come to the close of this presentation, I want to go back to the original question that I engaged Renetta on initially, which was, do mental health billers collaborate with CFOs and CPAs? And the answer revealed a much bigger truth for me. Practice owners and clinicians are only given the bare essentials. They were never given the financial or the operational infrastructure needed in order to run a sustainable healthcare business. So, this ecosystem, the Capital Clarity Collective, provides a roadmap. It provides RCM services. It provides CPA services, CFO services, and conjoining adjacent specialized services to support the practice owner in attempting to change all of this. So what we want to do is give clinicians and practice owners the financial and operational tools and resources, as well as the capital clarity that they should have had all along to begin with. And so with that, that is the presentation. And thank you for listening. And I'm looking forward to answering any questions that you have. If you would like, you can always schedule a consultation, a 15-minute consultation with myself to discuss where you are in your business and where you want to be as a practice owner. And I'm happy to discuss everything in this presentation again if you need to, if you have any questions. So feel free to reach out to me for the link and look forward to speaking with you soon. Thank you so much, and I hope that you have a good day.